The day Hannah Thornton discovered she and her sister had been sold like cattle was the same day she vowed never to trust a man again. The warm September breeze carried dust through the slats of their small cabin window as she stood frozen, overhearing her father's slurred negotiations with a stranger on the porch. $20 for the pair, Elijah Thornton's voice rasped, the familiar sound of a whiskey bottle clinking against wood punctuating his words. Pretty girls, both of them. The older one's got a temper, but she's strong. Younger one's quiet, follows orders, they'll work hard. Hannah, 20 years old with copper hair tumbling down her back in a hastily tied ribbon, pressed trembling fingers to her mouth. Her sister Lily, barely 18, slept soundly on the narrow bed they shared, unaware that their lives were being bartered away by the man who should have protected them. Raton, New Mexico Territory, 1883, was unforgiving to women without means. Ever since their mother had died 2 years prior, their father had descended into a spiral of drinking and gambling debts. Hannah had feared this day might come, but the reality of it struck her like a physical blow. "That all?" came a second male voice, deeper and steadier. "Two girls worth more than that, even in these parts." Hannah's breath caught. Was this stranger haggling for a higher price to buy them? Or was there something else in his tone, something that sounded almost like disgust? "Need the money now," her father insisted. "Take him or leave him." "Got other offers." The silence stretched long enough that Hannah nearly moved away from the window, but then the stranger spoke again. $50 for both, but I want papers signed." Hannah's knees nearly buckled. She reached for the worn dresser to steady herself, inadvertently knocking over a tin cup. The clatter woke Lily. "Hannah." Lily sat up, blonde hair in disarray, blue eyes still heavy with sleep. "What's happening?" Hannah pressed a finger to her lips, motioning for silence, but it was too late. Heavy footsteps crossed the porch, and the cabin door swung open with a creak that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat. Elijah Thornton stood framed in the doorway, a tall, once handsome man now ravaged by drink and desperation. Behind him loomed a broader figure, a man in a worn duster, his face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "Pack your things," their father announced without preamble. "You're going with Mr. Campbell." Hannah stepped forward, positioning herself between her father and Lily. "What do you mean going with him? We're not going anywhere." Her father's eyes, bloodshot and vacant, hardened. "Don't start, Hannah. It's done. Sign the papers already." The stranger, Mr. Campbell, stepped into the cabin, and Hannah got her first clear look at him. He wasn't as old as she'd expected, perhaps 30, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. "Yates Campbell," he introduced himself, his voice low but clear. "I own the Double C Ranch about 20 miles south of here." "I don't care if you own half the territory," Hannah retorted. "You can't buy people." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "I didn't buy you, Miss Thornton. I bought your father's debts from Wesley Jackson. The man was planning to collect by taking you and your sister to work in his saloon. I offered an alternative." Hannah's throat tightened. Wesley Jackson owned the notorious Red Garter Saloon, where women served far more than just drinks. "Why would you do that?" Lily asked softly from the bed, her voice small but steady. Yates Campbell's gaze shifted to the younger Thornton sister. "Because Jackson's a snake, and no woman deserves that fate. At my ranch, you'll have honest work, a roof over your heads, and no man will touch either of you without your permission. You'll both be protected there." Hannah wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but found her voice caught on the edge of desperate hope. "Protected by you? A man who just paid for us like we're horses at auction?" Campbell's expression remained impassive. "I understand your anger, Miss Thornton, but your choices right now are limited. Your father's leaving on the eastbound train in an hour. Jackson will come calling by sundown when he realizes I've interfered. You can stay and face him, or you can come with me." Hannah looked at her father, searching for any sign of the man who had once taught her to ride, who had held her when she cried over her mother's grave. There was nothing there but vacant desperation. "You would really leave us?" she whispered. For just a moment, shame flickered in Elijah Thornton's eyes. "Got nothing left here, Hannah. Debts are paid now. You girls will be better off." "Better off," Hannah's voice rose, "sold to a stranger." "Enough." Yates Campbell's voice cut through the tension. "You have 15 minutes to gather your belongings. I'll wait outside." When the door closed behind the two men, Hannah turned to Lily, who was already reaching for their mother's old carpet bag. "We could run," Hannah suggested, but even as she said it, she knew it was impossible. Two young women alone in the territory wouldn't survive a week. "Where would we go?" Lily asked pragmatically, already folding her single spare dress. "At least he doesn't seem cruel. That's all it takes now." Not seeming cruel, Hannah paced the small room, mind racing for alternatives and finding none. "He stopped Jackson from taking us," Lily pointed out. "That must count for something." Hannah paused, remembering the stories about Jackson's saloon. Girls who went in rarely came out, and those who did were never the same, with leaden hands. She began gathering their few possessions, their mother's silver brush, 2 dresses each, a worn Bible, and the small wooden box containing their mother's wedding ring and a lock of her hair. Everything they owned fit into a single bag and a small satchel. When they stepped outside, their father was nowhere to be seen, but Yates Campbell waited beside a wagon, his horse tethered behind. He took their bags without comment, placing them carefully in the back. "Your father's gone to the station," he said, answering Hannah's unasked question. "Said his goodbyes were already said." The bitterness that rose in Hannah's throat threatened to choke her. "They never were." Campbell nodded once, as though he understood perfectly. "We should move. It's a few hours to the ranch, and I'd like to be home before dark." He helped Lily onto the wagon seat, then extended his hand to Hannah. She ignored it, climbing up herself with practiced ease. As the wagon pulled away from the only home they'd known for the past 5 years, Hannah didn't look back. There was nothing there worth remembering anymore. The journey south was made mostly in silence. Occasionally, Lily would ask a tentative question about the ranch, and Campbell would answer in short but not unkind sentences. Yes, there were other women there, his housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, and her daughter Clara. Yes, they would have their own room. No, they wouldn't be expected to work with the cattle. There was plenty to do in the house and garden. Hannah listened but said nothing, watching the landscape change from scrubby pine forest to rolling grassland dotted with clusters of oak. She noted every landmark, every turn in the road, memorizing the way back to town should they need to escape. "It's pretty land," Lily ventured as they crested a hill that revealed a wide valley below. "It is," Campbell agreed. "My father claimed it 20 years ago, built it up from nothing. He died last winter. It's mine to look after now." Something in his tone, a subtle mixture of pride and grief, made Hannah glance at him. For just a moment, his guard seemed lowered, revealing a weariness that matched her own. "That's the ranch house," he said, nodding toward a large 2-story structure nestled against a backdrop of cottonwoods. It was larger than Hannah had expected, built of sturdy timber with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several outbuildings clustered nearby, and in the distance, she could see cattle grazing in fenced pastures. As they approached, a woman emerged onto the porch, stout and gray-haired, wiping her hands on an apron. Behind her hovered a younger woman with a similar round face. "That's Mrs. Abernathy and Clara," Campbell explained. "They've been with the ranch since before my time." The wagon rolled to a stop in the yard, and Campbell set the brake before jumping down. Hannah noticed several cowboys watching from the corral, their expressions curious but not unfriendly. "Mr. Campbell," Mrs. Abernathy called, bustling down the steps. "We weren't expecting you back until tomorrow." Her eyes widened when she saw Hannah and Lily. "And you've brought company," Campbell removed his hat. "Mrs. Abernathy, this is Hannah and Lily Thornton. They'll be staying with us." The older woman barely missed a beat. "Well then, welcome to Double C Ranch, girls. You must be exhausted from the journey. Clara, stop gawking and help get their bags." As Clara hurried forward, Campbell turned to Hannah, his voice pitched low. "Mrs. Abernathy doesn't need to know the circumstances. As far as anyone here is concerned, your family friends who needed a place to stay after your father moved east." Hannah's eyes narrowed. "Ashamed of your purchase, Mr. Campbell," his jaw tightened. "No. But I thought you might appreciate your dignity remaining intact." Before she could respond, Mrs. Abernathy had taken Lily by the arm and was leading her toward the house, chattering about supper and hot baths. Clara followed with their bags, leaving Hannah standing with Campbell in the yard. "This doesn't change anything," Hannah said quietly. "We don't belong to you." "No," he agreed, surprising her. You don't, I expect a fair day's work, and in return you'll have safety, food, and a roof. When you've worked enough to cover the $50 plus reasonable room and board, you're free to go wherever you please. Hannah searched his face for deception but found only steady resolve. And my sister stays with me, always. I gave my word, you'll both be protected here. He gestured toward the house. Go on now, Mrs. Abernathy's bathwater won't stay hot forever. Hannah walked away without another word, her back straight and her head high. She didn't know what game Yates Campbell was playing, but she was certain of one thing: she wouldn't stay on his ranch one day longer than necessary. The room they were given was larger than the entire cabin they'd shared with their father. Two narrow beds with clean linen stood against opposite walls, separated by a dresser topped with a washing basin. A braided rug covered part of the wooden floor, and curtains framed a window that overlooked the valley. It's beautiful, Lily whispered after Mrs. Abernathy left them to settle in. Like something from a storybook. Hannah ran her hand over the quilt, the fabric soft beneath her fingers. Don't get too comfortable, we're not staying. Lily sat on the edge of the other bed. Where would we go, Hannah? Back to town to do what? I don't know yet, Hannah admitted. But I'll figure something out. He seems decent, Lily ventured. Mr. Campbell. Hannah unpacked their meager possessions, placing their mother's brush on the dresser. Men always seem decent until they show their true colors. Later, after bathing in actual hot water, a luxury they hadn't experienced in years, and changing into clean clothes, they joined the household for supper. The dining room was simple but well furnished, with a long table that could seat at least a dozen people. Tonight it held only 5, themselves, Campbell, Mrs. Abernathy, and Clara. The food was plain but plentiful: roasted beef, potatoes, fresh bread, and vegetables from the garden. Hannah couldn't remember the last time she'd had such a meal. For the past year, they'd survived mostly on beans, cornmeal, and whatever game their father occasionally brought home. You girls must have had quite a shock, your father deciding to move east so suddenly, Mrs. Abernathy said, passing a bowl of potatoes. Men can be so impulsive. Hannah felt Campbell watching her, waiting to see if she would maintain the fiction he'd created. Yes, she said finally, it was unexpected. Well, you're welcome here as long as needed, the housekeeper continued. We can always use extra hands, especially with harvest coming. Do either of you sew? Hannah sews beautifully, Lily offered, smiling for the first time that day. She made both our dresses. Mrs. Abernathy nodded approvingly. Excellent, and you, Lily, what are your talents? Lily has a way with plants, Hannah answered when her sister hesitated. Our mother's garden never thrived until she took it over. Perfect. The kitchen garden needs tending, and I'm not as spry as I once was. The conversation continued, steering away from their past and focusing instead on the ranch and its rhythms. Hannah learned that there were 8 cowboys who worked the cattle, plus a cook who fed them in the bunkhouse. Campbell kept himself separate, taking his meals in the main house. The men won't bother you, Campbell said when Mrs. Abernathy mentioned the cowhands. They know the rules. And what rules are those? Hannah couldn't help asking. Respect for all women on this property, he replied evenly. Any man who can't abide by that finds himself looking for new employment very quickly. After supper, Campbell excused himself to check on the livestock, and Mrs. Abernathy shooed them toward the parlor. Early start tomorrow, she said cheerfully. But tonight rest. There's a piano if either of you play. Neither did, but Lily gravitated toward it anyway, pressing the keys softly while Clara showed her simple melodies. Hannah stood by the window, watching as Campbell crossed the yard toward the barn, his tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. What kind of man buys 2 women to save them from a worse fate? And more importantly, what would he eventually expect in return? The next morning dawned bright and clear. Hannah woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the distant sound of cattle lowing. For a moment, she was disoriented by the comfortable bed and clean sheets before reality rushed back. They had been sold. They were on a stranger's ranch. Their father was gone. Lily was already up, brushing her hair at the dresser. Mrs. Abernathy knocked earlier, she said. Breakfast is ready whenever we are. Hannah sat up, pushing her own copper hair from her face. Did you sleep well? Lily nodded. Better than I have in months. No mice, no drafts. She hesitated. Hannah, I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Hannah interrupted, though they both knew it was a lie. I'm practical, we need to be careful, we don't know these people. But no buts, Lily, promise me you'll be cautious, don't trust anyone too quickly. Lily sighed but nodded. I promise. Now come eat before the food gets cold. Breakfast was hearty eggs, bacon, biscuits, and strong coffee. Mrs. Abernathy explained their duties while they ate. Hannah would help with mending, laundry, and general household tasks. Lily would assist Clara with the garden and chickens. Where is Mr. Campbell? Lily asked, noticing his absence. Up since dawn, Mrs. Abernathy replied. He's always in the saddle early, probably won't see him until supper. The day passed quickly, filled with unfamiliar but not unpleasant work. The household linens needed mending, and Hannah found peace in the rhythmic motion of her needle. Through the open window, she could see Lily in the garden with Clara, their heads bent together over the vegetable rows. It was late afternoon when Hannah, arms full of folded sheets, nearly collided with Campbell in the upstairs hallway. "Excuse me," she said stiffly, stepping aside. He moved to let her pass, then hesitated. "Are you and your sister settling in all right?" As well as can be expected given the circumstances, his expression remained neutral. "Mrs. Abernathy seems pleased with your work." Hannah lifted her chin. "I've been working since I was old enough to hold a broom, Mr. Campbell. I don't need praise for doing what's expected." "That wasn't," he stopped, running a hand through his hair. "I wasn't implying otherwise." An awkward silence fell between them. "If you'll excuse me," Hannah said finally, "I need to finish putting these away." He nodded and stepped aside, but as she passed, he spoke again. "Miss Thornton, I know this isn't what you wanted, but I hope in time you'll see that my intentions are honorable." Hannah paused, the weight of the linens heavy in her arms. "Honorable intentions don't require purchasing human beings, Mr. Campbell." She continued down the hall without looking back. Days turned into weeks, and despite Hannah's determination to remain detached, a routine began to form. The work was hard but fair, the food plentiful, and for the first time in years, she slept through the night without worry. September gave way to October, bringing cooler nights and golden afternoons. Hannah found herself watching for Campbell's return each evening, telling herself it was only to avoid him, not out of any interest in his whereabouts. He remained an enigma, polite but distant at meals, gone for much of each day, sometimes returning with dust coating his clothes and weariness etched in the lines around his eyes. Occasionally, she would catch him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression unreadable. Lily, meanwhile, flourished. The garden thrived under her care, and she had taken to helping Clara with the cooking. More concerning to Hannah, her sister had begun to chat easily with the cowhands when they came to the house on errands, particularly a young one named Thomas. "You need to be more careful," Hannah cautioned one evening as they prepared for bed. "These men aren't our friends," Lily sighed, pulling a brush through her blonde hair. "They've all been perfect gentlemen, Hannah, and Thomas is sweet. Sweet doesn't mean trustworthy." "Not all men are like father," Lily said quietly. Hannah flinched as if struck. "This isn't about father, isn't it?" Lily set down the brush. "He betrayed us, Hannah. He sold us when he should have protected us, but that doesn't mean everyone will. You're being naive. And you're being unfair. Even to Mr. Campbell, who's done nothing but keep his word. We're safe here, we're fed, no one has mistreated us." Hannah couldn't argue with those facts, but something still held her back from accepting their situation. Perhaps it was pride, or perhaps it was simply that trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to rebuild. The following day brought unexpected excitement to the ranch. Hannah was hanging laundry when she heard hoofbeats approaching at speed. A rider appeared on the road, pushing his horse hard. One of the cowboys, Ben, she thought his name was, intercepted the rider at the gate. After a brief conversation, Ben sprinted toward the barn where Campbell was working. Minutes later, Campbell emerged, spoke briefly to the messenger, then strode toward the house, his expression grim. Hannah abandoned the laundry and followed him inside. "Mrs. Abernathy," Campbell called, "we need to prepare for company. Hartwell's men are driving a herd through the North Valley. They've had trouble with rustlers and need a place to hole up for the night." The housekeeper appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands. "How many?" 15 cowboys, plus Hartwell himself. Campbell noticed Hannah hovering in the doorway. "Miss Thornton, would you find your sister and Clara? I'd like all the women to stay close to the house tonight. Is there danger?" Hannah asked, a familiar knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. Campbell hesitated. "Probably not, but Hartwell hires rough men and they've been on the trail for weeks. Best to be cautious. By sunset, the yard was crowded with unfamiliar horses and men. Campbell had the bunkhouse cleared for Hartwell and his foreman, with the rest of the crew making camp by the corral. Hannah watched from the upstairs window as Campbell spoke with a stocky, gray-haired man she presumed was Hartwell. Their conversation appeared tense, with Campbell gesturing toward the house several times. "What do you think they're arguing about?" Lily asked, joining her at the window. "I don't know," Hannah admitted, "but I don't like it, Mrs. Abernathy insisted on feeding the visitors, though she did so by sending food to the bunkhouse and camp rather than inviting them into the house. Only Hartwell was asked to join them for supper, along with his trail boss. Hartwell was loud and crude, his face flushed with whiskey before the meal even began. His trail boss, a lean man with cold eyes who introduced himself only as Decker, said little but watched everything. "Mighty fine spread you've got here, Campbell," Hartwell boomed, helping himself to more beef. "Mighty fine women, too." Hannah felt Decker's eyes on her and fought the urge to squirm. "My housekeeper and her daughter have been with the ranch for years," Campbell replied evenly. "Miss Thornton and her sister are family friends staying with us temporarily." "That's so." Hartwell's gaze lingered on Lily. "Pretty little thing, ain't she?" Campbell set down his fork. "Mr. Hartwell, in my house we speak respectfully about women or not at all." A tense silence followed. Hannah held her breath, watching the muscles in Campbell's jaw work. Finally, Hartwell laughed. "No offense meant, Campbell, just admiring the view." The rest of the meal passed in uncomfortable conversation, with Hartwell doing most of the talking and Decker watching silently. Hannah caught Campbell's eye once and was surprised by the silent apology she read there. As soon as politeness allowed, Mrs. Abernathy ushered the women from the table to serve coffee in the parlor, leaving the men to their business. "Unpleasant man," Mrs. Abernathy muttered as they entered the parlor. "If Yates had any choice, he'd never do business with Hartwell." "Why does he?" Lily asked. "Hartwell owns the largest cattle operation in the territory, controls the best grazing land and the best prices. Small ranchers like the Double C can't afford to make enemies of him." Hannah frowned. "Mr. Campbell doesn't seem the type to bow to bullies." Mrs. Abernathy gave her a shrewd look. "He isn't, but he's also not a fool. The ranch was his father's life's work. He'll do what's needed to preserve it." Later, as Hannah and Lily prepared for bed, they could hear the visitors still carousing around their campfires. Raucous laughter and snatches of bawdy songs drifted through the partly open window. "I'll feel better when they're gone," Lily admitted, climbing into bed. Hannah crossed to close the window fully, but paused when she noticed two figures standing in the shadow of the barn. The moonlight was just bright enough to recognize Campbell and Decker, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion. Campbell's posture was rigid, one hand resting near the gun at his hip. Decker jabbed a finger toward the house, his face twisted in anger. Though she couldn't hear the words, the tension between them was palpable. Finally, Decker spat on the ground and stalked away. Campbell remained where he was for a long moment before turning toward the house, his face lifted to the stars as if seeking patience. Hannah closed the window quietly and turned back to find Lily already asleep. She lay down in her own bed, but sleep remained elusive as she replayed the scene in the yard, wondering what Decker had wanted and why Campbell had refused him. Her answer came shortly before dawn. Hannah had fallen into a light sleep only to be jolted awake by the sound of splintering wood. She sat up, heart pounding, as heavy footsteps thudded in the hallway. "Lily, wake up," she hissed, leaping from bed and shaking her sister's shoulder. The door to their room crashed open, revealing Decker and another man from Hartwell's crew. Both carried revolvers. "Well now, ain't this convenient? Two pretty birds in one nest," Decker drawled, his eyes raking over them. "Get dressed, ladies, you're coming with us." Hannah stepped in front of her sister. "We're not going anywhere with you." Decker's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Campbell refused to sell you to us proper, so we're taking what we want anyway. Hartwell's got a buyer in Santa Fe who pays top dollar for pretty girls." Cold terror washed through Hannah. This was exactly what Campbell had saved them from, only to have the same fate catch up with them anyway. "Get your clothes on or we'll take you as you are," the second man said, gesturing with his gun. Hannah's mind raced. They needed to buy time. "Let us dress." "Please, we won't fight," Decker narrowed his eyes but nodded. 2 minutes and leave the door open. Hannah pulled Lily to the dresser, positioning their bodies to block the men's view as best she could. Put on your dress, she whispered. When I say now, run for the window. But it's too high, just do it, Lily. With trembling hands, they pulled dresses over their nightgowns. Hannah's fingers brushed the ceramic water pitcher on the dresser, heavy with a wide handle. Time's up, ladies, Decker called. Now. Hannah shouted, grabbing the pitcher and hurling it at Decker's head. It connected with a sickening crack, sending him stumbling backward. Lily bolted for the window, fumbling with the latch. The second man cursed and raised his gun, but Hannah launched herself at him, clawing at his face. He howled in pain, the gun discharging into the ceiling. The shot echoed through the house as Hannah pushed past him, grabbing Lily's hand and pulling her into the hallway. They sprinted for the stairs, hearing Decker's furious shouts behind them. They were halfway down when a figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs, Campbell, revolver in hand, his expression murderous. Get behind me, he ordered as they reached him. Without hesitation, Hannah pulled Lily past him, positioning themselves against the wall. Decker appeared at the top of the stairs, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead, his gun trained on Campbell. This ain't your business anymore, Campbell, he snarled. We're taking the girls. You set foot on my property, broke into my home, and threatened women under my protection, Campbell replied, his voice deadly calm. That makes it very much my business. Hannah held her breath, the tension between the two men palpable. From outside came shouts and the sound of running feet as the ranch hands responded to the gunshot. You're outnumbered, Decker, Campbell continued. Drop the gun and take your sorry hide off my land while you still can. For a terrible moment, Hannah thought Decker would shoot anyway. Then Hartwell's voice boomed from the doorway. Decker, what the hell are you doing? Decker's gaze flicked toward his boss, his grip on the gun faltering. Just collecting what's ours, boss. These women aren't property, Campbell said, his gun unwavering, and they're certainly not yours. Hartwell's face darkened as he took in the scene. Put the gun down, Decker. Now, slowly, Decker lowered his weapon. The second man appeared behind him, his face bloodied from Hannah's attack. Get your men and your cattle off my land, Campbell told Hartwell. You've worn out your welcome. Hartwell's expression was thunderous, but he nodded curtly. Decker, Jenkins outside, now. As the men descended the stairs, giving Campbell a wide berth, Hartwell added, This isn't over, Campbell. Yes, it is, Campbell replied, unless you want the law involved. Breaking and entering, attempted kidnapping, those are hanging offenses in this territory. Hartwell's face twisted with rage, but he said nothing more, turning on his heel and stalking out. Only when they were gone did Campbell lower his gun. He turned to Hannah and Lily, his eyes quickly scanning them for injury. Are you hurt? Hannah shook her head, still clutching Lily's hand. No, but if you hadn't been here. I suspected they might try something, Campbell admitted. I've been in the parlor all night. By now, the house was fully awake. Mrs. Abernathy appeared from the kitchen, a rolling pin clutched in her hand like a weapon. Behind her, Clara peered wide-eyed around the doorframe. Those animals, Mrs. Abernathy spat. Are they gone? They will be soon, Campbell assured her. Ben and the boys are making sure of it. He turned back to Hannah and Lily. You should go back upstairs, try to rest. I'll have someone guard your door until they're gone. Hannah nodded, suddenly exhausted now that the danger had passed, but as she and Lily turned to go, she paused. Mr. Campbell, he looked at her questioningly. Thank you, she said simply. Something shifted in his expression, surprise perhaps, or a cautious hope. You're welcome, Miss Thornton. By midday, Hartwell and his men were gone, leaving only churned earth and trampled grass as evidence of their visit. Campbell rode out with several hands to make sure they truly left the area, returning as the sun began to set. Hannah was sitting on the porch when he returned, her mending forgotten in her lap as she watched him dismount and hand his horse to one of the cowhands. He looked tired, dust coating his clothes and lines of fatigue etched around his eyes. He noticed her as he climbed the porch steps, removing his hat. Miss Thornton, feeling better? Yes, she said, though I keep thinking about what might have happened if you hadn't been there. Campbell sat heavily in the chair beside her, but I was. Why? The question had been gnawing at her all day. Why were you so determined to protect us, first from Jackson, now from Hartwell's men? You barely know us. He was quiet for so long that Hannah thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. I had a sister, Elizabeth. She was 16 when my father and I went to Kansas City on business. While we were gone, a group of men came through the ranch. He stopped, his knuckles white where they gripped the hat in his hands. She fought them, they killed her for it. Hannah's heart constricted. I'm so sorry. It was 5 years ago. The men were never caught. His gaze fixed on the distant mountains. I couldn't save her, but when I saw your father trying to sell you and your sister, knowing what Jackson would do, he shook his head. I couldn't stand by and let it happen. The pieces suddenly fit together: his protectiveness, the rules for the ranch hands, his sleepless vigil the previous night. So it was never about owning us, she said softly, his head snapped toward her, shock evident in his expression. God, no, never that, but you paid for us. I paid to clear your father's debts, he corrected, to give you a choice beyond Jackson or starvation. Hannah studied his face, seeing it clearly, perhaps for the first time, the strength in his jawline, the tiny scar near his left eyebrow, the weariness but also the fundamental decency in his gray eyes. I think I misjudged you, Mr. Campbell. A small smile touched his lips. Yates, please. Yates, she repeated, testing the name. I'm Hannah. I know. His smile widened slightly. You've made quite an impression, Hannah Thornton. Something warm unfurled in her chest at the way he said her name. Before she could examine the feeling too closely, the dinner bell rang from inside. Shall we? He asked, standing and offering his hand. This time she took it. The weeks that followed brought subtle changes to life at the Double C Ranch. The harvest was completed, the garden put to bed for winter, and preparations for the cold months began in earnest. Hannah found herself working alongside Yates, more often helping to inventory supplies, mending winter gear for the hands, even learning to keep the ranch's account books. He was patient but never condescending, answering her questions and genuinely valuing her suggestions. She discovered he had a dry wit that emerged when he was relaxed, and that he loved poetry, often reading aloud in the evenings while the women sewed. Lily noticed the change in their relationship, of course. You like him, she observed one night as they prepared for bed. He's a good man, Hannah replied carefully. Lily smiled knowingly. That's not what I meant. Hannah felt her cheeks warm. It doesn't matter, we'll be leaving eventually. Will we? Lily sat on her bed, drawing her knees up. Hannah, I don't want to leave, I like it here. I like the work, I like the people, she hesitated, and I think Thomas might ask to court me properly. Hannah stared at her sister. You're only 18. Mother was 17 when she married father, and look how that turned out. Lily's expression hardened. Thomas isn't father. And I'm not mother. Hannah sat beside her sister, taking her hand. I just want you to be sure to be safe. I am sure, and I am safe, we both are. You know it too, or you wouldn't be looking at Yates the way you do. Hannah couldn't deny it. Somehow, despite her determination to remain detached, Yates Campbell had slipped past her defenses. She found herself watching for him each day, treasuring their conversations, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. But admitting her feelings, even to herself, was terrifying. Her father's betrayal had left wounds still raw and bleeding. I don't know if I can trust him, she whispered. I don't know if I can trust anyone. Lily squeezed her hand. Trust takes time, but I've seen how he looks at you when you're not watching. He'd never hurt you, Hannah. The first snow came in November, transforming the ranch into a wonderland of white. Hannah stood on the porch, watching fat flakes drift from a pewter sky, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. Beautiful, isn't it? Yates said, stepping out to join her. She nodded, drawing her shawl tighter. I've always loved the first snow. Everything seemed so peaceful. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the snow accumulate on fence posts and tree branches. The men have organized a dance for next Saturday, Yates said after a while, in the barn. They do it every winter, clears away the cabin fever. Mrs. Abernathy's already planning the food. That sounds nice. He turned to face her, his expression earnest. Would you allow me to escort you? You and Lily, of course, he added hastily. Hannah felt a flutter in her chest. I'd like that. Though I think Lily might already have an escort in mind, Yates smiled. Thomas has been gathering his courage for weeks. I told him he had my blessing as long as his intentions are honorable. And are they? Very much so. He's a good man, Hannah. Steady, hardworking. He'd treat Lily well. Hannah nodded slowly. Then I won't stand in their way, his smile widened. And me, will you stand in my way? The directness of the question caught her off guard. What do you mean, I think you know? He took a step closer. I care for you, Hannah. More than I should, perhaps, given how we met, but these past months. He trailed off, searching for words. Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything now. He reached out hesitantly, and when she didn't pull away, he tucked a strand of copper hair behind her ear. Just promise you'll save me a dance on Saturday. His fingers were warm against her skin, and Hannah found herself leaning into the touch. I promise. The day of the dance arrived with clear skies and crisp air. The entire ranch was abuzz with preparation, the barn cleared and decorated with lanterns, tables laden with food, a space cleared for dancing. Several of the hands played instruments, and by late afternoon, the sound of a fiddle being tuned drifted across the yard. In their room, Hannah and Lily helped each other dress. They had spent the past week altering two of Mrs. Abernathy's old dresses, Lily's a soft blue that matched her eyes, Hannah's a deep green that set off her copper hair. You look beautiful, Lily said as Hannah pinned her hair up, leaving a few curls to frame her face. So do you. Hannah adjusted the ribbon at her sister's waist. Thomas won't be able to take his eyes off you, Lily blushed. Do you think Yates will ask you to dance more than once? I don't know, Hannah admitted. Maybe he will, Lily said confidently. Clara says he's never shown interest in any woman before you. Not even when his father tried to matchmake with the banker's daughter in town. Hannah tried to quell the surge of pleasure those words brought. We should go down, they'll be waiting. Yates and Thomas were indeed waiting in the parlor, both looking somewhat uncomfortable in their best clothes. Thomas's face lit up when he saw Lily, his admiration plain, but it was Yates's expression that stole Hannah's breath, a look of wonder, as if he were seeing something precious and unexpected. You look. He began, then shook his head, words failing him. Hannah felt a blush creep up her neck. Thank you, he offered his arm. Shall we? The barn was transformed, lanterns casting a warm glow, hay bales arranged for seating, a small stage set up for the musicians. Nearly everyone from the ranch was there, plus a few families from neighboring properties. The music started as they entered, a lively reel that had couples forming lines down the center of the barn. Without hesitation, Thomas led Lily to join them. Would you like to dance? Yates asked. Or would you prefer to get some food first? Dance, Hannah decided. I haven't danced in years. He led her to the line, his hand warm at the small of her back. I should warn you, I'm not very good at this. Hannah laughed. Neither am I, we can be terrible together. And terrible they were, at first stepping on each other's toes, missing turns, laughing as they tried to keep pace with the music. But gradually they found their rhythm, moving together more smoothly as the evening progressed. Between dances they ate Mrs. Abernathy's food, talked with the other guests, and watched Lily bloom under Thomas's attentive care. Hannah couldn't remember the last time she had felt so light, so unburdened. When the musicians shifted to a slower waltz, Yates held out his hand. One more. Hannah placed her hand in his, allowing him to draw her closer than before. His hand rested respectfully at her waist, but she was acutely aware of the heat of his palm through the fabric of her dress, the subtle scent of soap and leather that clung to him. Are you enjoying yourself? He asked as they moved around the floor. Very much. She smiled up at him. Though I may regret all this dancing tomorrow when my feet remind me how long it's been. Worth it, I hope. His expression grew more serious. Hannah, there's something I've been wanting to tell you. Her pulse quickened. Yes, the $50 the debt, you've more than worked it off already, both of you have. He hesitated. You're free to go if that's what you want. Hannah missed a step, thrown by the unexpected statement. Oh, but I hope you'll stay, he continued quickly. Not as workers paying off a debt, but as, well, as whatever you want to be. The music swelled around them, other couples spinning past in a blur of color and movement. Hannah studied his face, seeing vulnerability beneath the strength she had come to admire. What if I don't know what I want to be? She asked softly, his grip tightened slightly. Then stay until you figure it out. There's no rush, Hannah, no pressure. The song ended and they stood still while other couples dispersed. Hannah was aware of Lily watching from across the room, her expression hopeful. Could we go outside for a moment? Hannah asked. I need some air. Concern flashed across Yates's face, but he nodded. grabbing a blanket from a nearby hay bale and draping it around her shoulders before leading her through the barn doors. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered like diamonds across the black velvet sky. Their breath formed clouds in the freezing air as they walked a little way from the barn, the music fading to a distant melody behind them. "I'm sorry if I spoke out of turn," Yates said when they stopped. Hannah shook her head. "You didn't. I just needed to think." She turned to face him fully. "When I first came here, all I wanted was to leave, to take Lily somewhere safe, away from men who saw us as property. And now I realize we are safe, here with you." She took a deep breath. "I don't want to leave, Yates." The hope that bloomed on his face was beautiful to behold. No, she took a step closer, "but I don't want to stay as just a worker either." His hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle. "What do you want, Hannah?" "I want." The words caught in her throat, years of caution warring with the feelings that had grown steadily over the past months. "I want to see where this leads, you and me." Yates's smile was slow and tender. "I'd like that too, very much." He bent his head, hesitating just a breath away from her lips, giving her time to pull away if she wished, but Hannah had made her decision. She closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a question asked and answered. Then his arms slipped around her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened, becoming something more a promise, a beginning. When they finally broke apart, Hannah was breathless, her heart pounding a rapid tattoo against her ribs. Yates rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if savoring the moment. "I've wanted to do that for a very long time," he murmured. Hannah smiled, feeling a happiness she had almost forgotten was possible. "So have I." The sound of the barn door opening made them step apart. Lily appeared, her cheeks flushed from dancing. "There you are. Thomas is asking if we can join his family for Christmas next week. I told him I needed to ask you first." She paused, taking in their proximity the lingering touch of Yates's hand on Hannah's waist. A knowing smile spread across her face. "Unless you have other plans," Hannah looked up at Yates, seeing her own joy reflected in his eyes. "I think we can arrange something," she said. "Perhaps Christmas dinner here at the ranch." Yates nodded. "The more the merrier." Lily's smile widened. "Perfect, I'll tell Thomas." She disappeared back into the barn, clearly giving them privacy. "Your sister approves, it seems," Yates observed. Hannah laughed softly. "She's been pushing me toward you for weeks. Smart girl." He tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "We should go back in before they send a search party." But he made no move to leave, instead drawing her close for another kiss, slower and more deliberate than the first. "Or we could stay here a little longer," Hannah suggested when they broke apart, her arms winding around his neck. Yates's chuckle rumbled through his chest. "As the lady wishes." The stars wheeled overhead as they stood entwined in the winter night. Two people who had found each other against all odds, building something new from the ashes of their separate pains. And Hannah knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Winter melted into spring, and with the changing season came new beginnings at the Double C Ranch. Thomas proposed to Lily properly, offering a small gold ring that had belonged to his grandmother. The wedding was set for June, when the wildflowers would carpet the valley. Hannah and Yates's courtship progressed more slowly, but with a depth that grew with each passing day. He was patient, never pushing, always attentive to her boundaries. They rode together across the ranch lands, shared books and ideas, talked long into the evening about their hopes and dreams. Gradually, Hannah allowed herself to trust again, not blindly, but with eyes open to both Yates's strengths and his flaws. She saw his occasional stubbornness, his tendency to shoulder burdens alone, the nightmares that sometimes woke him in a cold sweat. And he saw her fears, her fierce protectiveness of Lily, the scars left by her father's betrayal. But they saw the good in each other too: Yates's unfailing integrity, his kindness to those who worked for him, the gentle way he treated animals. Hannah's resilience, her sharp mind, her capacity for joy despite everything she had endured. Spring roundup kept the ranch busy, with cattle to be counted, calves branded, and preparations made for summer grazing. Hannah found herself increasingly involved in the ranch's operations, her natural organizational abilities complementing Yates's practical knowledge. "You're good at this," he told her one evening as they reviewed the account books together. Better than I am, truth be told, Hannah smiled. Numbers make sense to me, they don't lie or change their minds. Unlike people, Yates observed, reaching across the desk to take her hand. Have you thought more about what you want for the future, Hannah? Not just for the next few months, but beyond? Her heart skipped a beat. They hadn't spoken directly of marriage, though it hovered unspoken in many of their conversations. I have, she admitted. I want to stay here with you. She hesitated, then added, I want to help build something lasting, something that's ours. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. I was hoping you'd say that. 2 days later, he took her riding to a hilltop overlooking the ranch. Spring flowers dotted the grass around them as they spread a blanket for a picnic lunch. I've been thinking, Yates said as they finished eating, about what you said, building something lasting. Hannah nodded, watching a hawk circle lazily overhead. My father built this ranch from nothing, he continued, worked himself to the bone for it. When he died, I promised myself I'd preserve his legacy. He turned to face her fully. But now I want more than that. I want to build our legacy, Hannah, together. From his pocket, he withdrew a small box. Hannah's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl. It was my mother's, he explained. My father gave it to her the day they decided to start the ranch together. He took her hand, his own trembling slightly. Hannah Thornton, will you marry me? Be my partner in everything, this ranch, this life, whatever the future brings. Tears sprang to Hannah's eyes, not of sorrow but of a joy so overwhelming it felt almost like pain. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms, sealing the promise with a kiss that spoke of all the tomorrows stretching before them. They were married in August, beneath the cottonwood trees by the creek. Lily, already Mrs. Thomas Jenkins for 2 months, stood as Hannah's attendant, her face glowing with happiness for her sister. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, attended by everyone from the ranch and neighboring properties. Hannah wore a dress of ivory silk that Mrs. Abernathy and Clara had labored over for weeks, with wildflowers in her copper hair. When the circuit preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Yates kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to more eyes than just Hannah's. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing, food and laughter. When they finally retired to the master bedroom, now theirs together, Hannah felt a curious mixture of nervousness and absolute rightness. Yates must have sensed her tension. We can go as slowly as you need, he said softly, taking her hands in his. Hannah smiled, love welling up within her for this man who always considered her feelings first. I'm not afraid, she assured him. Not with you. Their first night together as husband and wife was a revelation, tender and passionate by turns, a joining of bodies that mirrored the joining of their lives. Afterward, as Hannah lay in Yates's arms, watching moonlight pattern the ceiling, she marveled at the journey that had brought her here. What are you thinking? Yates murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. That I never expected this, she admitted. That day when my father sold us, I thought my life was ending. Instead, it was just beginning. He pulled her closer. I thank God every day that I was in Raton that morning, that I overheard Jackson's plans. Providence, Hannah said, remembering something her mother used to say. Sometimes the worst moments lead us to the best ones. Yates pressed a kiss to her forehead. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure your best moments outnumber the worst, Hannah Campbell. Hannah smiled at her new name, at the promise it held. We'll do that for each other. The years that followed brought changes to the Double C Ranch. Under Hannah and Yates's joint management, it prospered, expanding its holdings and improving its breeding stock. The main house grew too, with the addition of a new wing to accommodate their growing family. Their first child, a son they named James after Yates's father, arrived a year after their wedding, a sturdy boy with his mother's copper hair and his father's gray eyes. A daughter, Elizabeth, named for Yates's lost sister, followed 2 years later, and then another son, Michael. Lily and Thomas thrived as well, managing a small homestead adjacent to the Double C, their 3 children frequent visitors to the main ranch house. The sisters remained as close as ever, their bond unbreakable. On the 5th anniversary of Hannah and Yates's wedding, the entire extended family gathered for a celebration beneath the same cottonwood trees where they had exchanged vows. As twilight descended, Yates found Hannah sitting alone on the porch swing, watching their children play with their cousins in the yard. "Happy?" he asked, settling beside her. Hannah leaned into his side, his arm automatically coming around her shoulders. "Completely." They sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of children's laughter and distant cattle lowing creating a peaceful backdrop to the moment. "I got a letter today," Yates said eventually. "From back east." Hannah looked up at him. "Oh, from your father," she stiffened. "What did he want?" "To apologize, mainly." Yates hesitated. "He's dying, Hannah. Consumption. The doctor gives him a few months at most." A complicated tangle of emotions knotted in Hannah's chest: anger, grief, a residual hurt that had never fully healed. "I see. He wants to see you and Lily before he goes. Make amends if possible." Yates's voice was gentle. "I told him I would give you the letter, but the decision was entirely yours." Hannah watched James chase Elizabeth across the yard, their faces alight with joy. "I don't know if I can forgive him." "You don't have to," Yates assured her. "But you might regret not hearing what he has to say." She sighed, recognizing the wisdom in his words. "When did you get so wise?" "Married a smart woman," he replied with a small smile. "Some of it was bound to rub off." Hannah laughed softly, then grew serious again. "Will you come with me?" "If I decide to go, wherever you need, always." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "But there's no rush to decide. Think on it." In the end, Hannah and Lily did go east to see their father, taking Yates and Thomas with them for support. Elijah Thornton was a shadow of the man they remembered, gaunt and hollow-eyed in a charity hospital bed. The reunion was difficult, laden with years of hurt and abandonment. But there was healing too, in the genuine remorse they saw in their father's eyes, in the chance to speak truths long held silent. "I don't expect forgiveness," Elijah told them. "Don't deserve it. But I want you to know I think of what I did every day, and I'm glad, so glad that you found good men. Better men than I ever was." Hannah couldn't offer full forgiveness, not yet, but she could offer compassion to a dying man who had, in his own broken way, given her the chance at the life she now treasured. When they returned to the Double C Ranch, autumn was painting the cottonwoods gold. Hannah stood on the porch, watching the sunset bathe their land in amber light, feeling a profound sense of homecoming. Yates joined her, their youngest son sleepy in his arms. "Welcome home, Mrs. Campbell." Hannah smiled, taking the child from him and breathing in his sweet scent. "It's good to be home." And it was this place that had begun as her prison had become her sanctuary, her joy, her future. The land stretched before them, golden in the fading light, promising seasons of growth and harvest, winters of rest, springs of renewal. Yates slipped his arm around her waist, drawing her close as they watched the sun sink below the horizon. "What are you thinking?" he asked, echoing a question that had become familiar between them over the years. Hannah leaned her head against his shoulder. "That some promises are kept after all." She looked up at him, love filling her heart to overflowing. "You said we'd both be protected here, and we are. Always," Yates murmured, bending to kiss her as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "Always." As twilight deepened into night, the lights of the Double C Ranch glowed warm and welcoming across the valley, a beacon of the home and family that Hannah Thornton Campbell had built from the ashes of betrayal. A testament to the love that had transformed two broken souls into something stronger and more beautiful than either could have imagined alone. 10 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, Hannah stood on the porch of the Double C Ranch, watching her eldest son ride out with Yates to check the north pasture. At 15, James was already showing signs of becoming the man his father was: steady, compassionate, with a natural feel for the land and animals. Elizabeth, now 12, sat on the porch steps sketching the landscape with remarkable talent for one so young. 7-year-old Michael played nearby with the ranch dog, a spirited game that involved much laughter and barking. Their youngest, 3-year-old Sarah, named for Hannah's mother, napped inside under Mrs. Abernathy's watchful eye. The housekeeper was well into her 70s now but refused to retire, insisting that keeping busy kept her young. From the direction of Thomas and Lily's homestead came the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Hannah smiled as her sister appeared, her youngest balanced in front of her on the saddle. "Good morning," Lily called, reining in her horse and dismounting gracefully. Despite being 7 months pregnant with her 5th child, Hannah hurried down the steps to help her niece from the saddle. What brings you over so early? Thomas is taking the boys to town, and I thought Sarah and I would visit while they're gone. Lily embraced her sister warmly. Besides, I wanted to discuss the Harvest Festival. It's only 3 weeks away, and there's still so much to plan. The annual Harvest Festival had become a tradition under Hannah and Lily's guidance, a gathering of all the neighboring ranches and farms to celebrate the season's bounty before winter set in. What had begun as a simple dinner had grown into a day-long affair with games, music, and a feast that people talked about for months afterward. As the sisters settled on the porch with cups of coffee, discussing decorations and menu plans, Hannah felt a familiar surge of contentment. Their lives had taken a path neither could have imagined that terrible day their father sold them. Yet here they were surrounded by family, secure in their homes, their futures bright with possibility. By midday, Yates and James returned, bringing news of a mountain lion sighted near the north boundary. "Nothing to worry about," Yates assured Hannah, seeing her concern. "Just means we'll need to keep a closer eye on the calves for a while." Over lunch, they discussed plans for the coming winter. The ranch had prospered over the years, growing to 3 times its original size. They now employed 15 full-time hands, ran over 1,000 head of cattle, and had added sheep to their operations at Hannah's suggestion. "The wool prices are holding steady," Hannah noted as she reviewed the latest market reports. "If the weather holds, we should be able to get the full clip to market before the snow." Yates smiled at her across the table, always thinking ahead. "One of us has to," she teased. They had fallen into a natural rhythm over the years, Hannah managing the business side of the ranch, Yates overseeing the daily operations, both consulting the other on major decisions. As the afternoon waned, Lily prepared to return home, promising to send her oldest boy over the next day with the fabric she'd purchased for festival bunting. "I'll walk you out," Hannah said, following her sister to the yard where a ranch hand had readied Lily's horse. "You know," Lily remarked as they reached the animal, "sometimes I still can't believe how everything turned out." Hannah helped her sister mount, mindful of her pregnancy. "What do you mean? That day when Father sold us, I was so terrified." Lily adjusted her skirts on the side saddle. "But look at us now, happy, loved, with beautiful families." Hannah nodded, understanding perfectly. "We were fortunate." "More than fortunate," Lily countered. "Blessed." She leaned down to squeeze Hannah's hand. "See you tomorrow, sister." As Hannah watched Lily ride away, Yates joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Everything all right, just thinking about how life takes unexpected turns." She leaned into his embrace. 15 years ago, I hated you on principle," he chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest. "You made that abundantly clear. And now look at us." Yates turned her to face him, his expression growing serious. "Do you ever regret it, coming here?" Hannah reached up to touch his face, tracing the familiar lines at the corners of his eyes, the streaks of gray now threading through his dark hair. "Not for a single moment." His smile was tender as he bent to kiss her, a gesture still filled with the same warmth and promise as their first kiss all those years ago. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, their children gathered around them. Hannah's thoughts drifted to the long journey that had brought them to this moment. From the ashes of betrayal had risen something beautiful, a family bound by love rather than obligation, a home built on mutual respect and shared dreams. The scars of the past remained, but they had faded, overtaken by the joys of the present and the hopes for the future. Yates reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining in a gesture as familiar as breathing. "What are you thinking?" he asked, the question a cherished ritual between them. Hannah smiled, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "That some promises are worth keeping. And that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a better one." Yates's hand tightened around hers. "Our story." "Yes," Hannah agreed, heart full as she looked at the family they had created together. "Ours." And as night fell over the Double C Ranch, bringing with it the gentle sounds of cattle lowing in the distance and children's sleepy murmurs, Hannah Thornton Campbell knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, protected, cherished, and most importantly, home.